Chain smoke your problems away. Smokepit Fairy Tales, Part 4, Chapter 27. May the fires of hell purge me clean. Thatch screamed.
Call company and tell them the ship's about to explode!
And sprinted after Akan through the fires towards the burning corner of the room. Chuck grabbed Stockton and hoisted her onto his back.
Get the others!
He ordered his team. Capulet and McKenzie's teams also helped with the casualties.
Lighthouse, take the rest of your squad and clear the way for us.
The Marines who could grabbed the wounded and hauled ass to the bulkhead they came from.
All stations, all stations!
Chuck called over all frequencies.
The ship's been rigged to explode. Evacuate immediately.
Chuck's HUD lit up with interrogatives from the rest of the company. Stockton pressed her hand into Chuck's back to try to stabilize herself. The constant bumping up and down tore at the shattered bones in her leg. She moaned in agony, but managed to keep herself awake enough to stay on his back.
What's going on?
Captain Rodzer called in to Chuck.
Half of first platoon is down. The Russians dismantled torpedoes and set them to blow in the fuel room.
Where's the lieutenant?
He's busy trying not to bleed out. So's the staff sergeant. Allensworth and O'Connor are trying to stop the explosion.
Chuck dipped through the hole in the bulkhead and trotted through the engine room.
Hold position and stand by. I'm gonna send in the OD.
Chuck ignored the order.
Sir, there's no fucking time for that. The warheads are welded into the command room and are set to explode in less than...
Chuck looked down at the clock on his HUD.
5 minutes at best. This ship is going down.
The captain was silent for a second before calling an all-hands retreat. Second squad led what was left of the platoon through the engine room, up out through the passageways to the mess decks and through the crew's quarters to the port side of the ship. The landing vehicles opened their hatches and the Marines loaded the wounded until there wasn't enough room to fit anyone else. Chuck dropped Stockton in one of the seats.
You're gonna be alright, buddy.
Stockton tried to smile at him through the searing pain and nodded. Chuck pointed at the crew chief.
Get them out of here. There's another pig down the hall.
The crew chief gave Chuck a thumbs up.
Let me know when you're past the seal and I can pull out without sucking you with me.
Yep.
Chuck hopped out of the pig and pointed down the hall.
Fucking go! Get on the other pigs!
The platoon scrambled to jump in whatever landing craft they could. The next craft sticking into the bulkhead was a few meters away. Chuck shuffled in the rest of the Marines that could fit.
There's not enough room for everyone.
Capulet hissed. McKenzie kicked in the last Marine he could fit and shut the hatch. All that was left on the ship was Chuck, Capulet, McKenzie, Lighthouse, and Christchurch. They sprinted to one of the separator hatches in the passageway and sealed it closed. Chuck called the crew chiefs of the loaded landing craft and told them to get the hell out of Dodge. The 5 of them bolted down the halls trying to find another craft to leave on. Their maps were still fuzzy. The full render had never oriented. They pulled open a hatch and continued down the outer bulkhead and dashed forward without closing it. A jarring explosion shook the hull of the ship. The 5 of them were thrown off the deck into the bulkheads. Only a moment after they hit the ground, the gravity failed and they started to float. Chuck's heart raced. Anxiety and fear consumed his being and he slammed his eyes shut, waiting for the flames to engulf him or for twisted metal to tear his body to shreds. But it didn't come. He lifted his eyelids and saw the others floating around him. He called in a calm panic.
Guys?
Yeah?
We're not dead?
Doesn't look like it.
Capulet whispered. He activated the magnets in his boots and planted his feet on the floor. The others did the same.
Do you think they got the fuel out in time?
McKenzie wondered aloud.
Either that or the Russians are so incompetent they can't even blow up their own ship.
Capulet answered him.
Well, we should go check, right?
Yeah.
Chuck held his rifle by his side, pushed through the others, and headed back towards the fuel room. The magnets in their boots were designed to have as much pull as Martian gravity, which incidentally had been adjusted to be as close to Earth's gravity during the terraforming process as they could get it. The Marines were fine, except in the mess deck and crew quarters, where an imitation wood floor forced them to float through the sections. They closed the door in the passageway leading to the engine room and cracked the next hatch open. The air hissed out of the section into the next compartment. The engine room was dark, but unchanged since they had left. Chuck stuck his head through the holes cut in the bulkhead to the fuel room. There was nothing besides gangly, sharp, twisted steel. The side bulkhead was torn to bits, and he could see the stars where the wall should have been. His heart sank. Thatch and Akan were nowhere to be seen. Neither were the bodies of the Marines who had been killed earlier. Chuck stepped through the hole and walked into the shredded remnants of the room.
Oh no.
McKenzie muttered when he saw the room.
Do you think they made it out?
Lighthouse and Christchurch tried to hold in their tears. They saw the bottom shard in the distance. They were just close enough to see the landing craft float into the well deck.
Well, what the fuck do we do now?
Christchurch demanded. Chuck looked at her in disgust, not directly at her, but from the buildup of shit stew the day had turned into. He broadcasted on all frequencies.
Any station, India 1-1.
Only static returned his call. He tried pushing his signal again, to no avail.
We're just going to have to wait for them to show back up.
McKenzie walked to the edge of the hole in the side of the ship and searched the heavens.
I don't see the rest of the flotilla.
Oh yeah, I kind of forgot about that.
They should send someone back here soon then, right?
Lighthouse asked. Chuck shrugged and looked at the end of the room Thatch and Akan had run to.
I guess. I don't fucking know, man.
Well, what the fuck do we do?
They stood looking after their ship for a few minutes, trying not to let dread, fear, or sorrow take hold before Capulet said,
We should go to the galley and try to scrounge up chow and water.
Chuck winced at him, wondering how Capulet could think about food, then noticed that he was out of liquids. He backed down.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
They made their way back up to the mess deck, closing every hatch they could find on the way up. The galley was a mess. Plates, cups, utensils, and bits of food floated in the air. McKenzie grabbed a bowl and tried to fill it with water from a fountain. The liquid flew around him. He tried to catch what he could in the bowl to drink. He took off his helmet and his mask. The air was cold, maybe just above freezing. He hadn't noticed it before because his suit protected him from the environment. McKenzie realized he couldn't drink from the bowl, so he twisted the bowl around the stream until there was a sphere of floating water. He put the bowl to the side and pressed his lips to the liquid, sucking it in. Chuck couldn't help but smile at how absurd McKenzie looked trying to drink.
You look like you're trying to suck a ghost dick.
Chuck said as he pulled off his helmet. The air hit his face.
Fuck, it's cold in here.
I know.
McKenzie licked at the water floating in the air.
You're an idiot.
Fucking thirsty is what I am.
Capulet scooted McKenzie out of the way.
Watch this.
Capulet put his mouth close to the fountain and pushed the button back. The water flew straight into his mouth. Capulet smirked at McKenzie.
Jackass.
McKenzie rolled his eyes.
It's been a long day, okay?
Yeah.
Capulet turned off the magnets in his boots and floated up. He clipped his helmet to his belt, crossed his arms, and relaxed. The other Marines took turns drinking from the fountain, then stood or floated in silence, wondering what was going to happen to them next.
How long have we been on this ship?
Lighthouse broke the silence. Chuck put his helmet back on and checked the time.
6 hours.
He ran through the files in his computer via the HUD, looking for anything to pass the time. He figured while he had his helmet on, he should try hailing the BHR. He called. Nothing but static answered him.
Has anyone heard of this happening before?
Christchurch asked.
Not quite like this. Thatch and Okan were separated from their company in a failed landing when they were boots and had to evade until they could steal an escape pod. But that ship was full of pissed off Russians. All the ones here are dead or gone.
Are we actually sure about that?
No. But I've had my rifle pointed towards the hatch just in case.
Do you think that if we went to the communications room, we could contact the BHR?
The Russians have different encryptions than we do. They wouldn't get the message.
Yeah, but they'd pick up that communications were going out and know that there's still people aboard.
Maybe, but it's gonna happen when Ivan hears English on his radio.
What could they do? We've got 3 ships out there and they have to know they lost this one.
Or maybe you could go outside of the bridge and wave a flare.
The Marines jerked around to see Thatch and Akan floating through the mess deck.
Holy shit!
Chuck jumped over to hug Thatch. Chuck was filled to the brim with joy.
We thought you were dead, man!
Thatch smiled and Chuck floated back. The Marines looked over at Thatch and Akan. Neither of them had weapons, magazines, or helmets, and their suits were charred and warped from heat. Akan didn't have gloves on, and Thatch had one glove melted to a magazine, and the other melted to Akan's breast.
What happened there?
Capulet asked, pointed to them.
Our rounds were cooking off and we had to get rid of our ammo. Last mag melted my glove.
No, he fucking tried to push me away from the engine room hatch while he was closing it and his glove melted.
Shit.
Yeah, we were on fire for a few seconds. Then we had to ditch our helmets because the glass started to melt and we couldn't see through them once we got away.
Akan felt Thatch squeeze her breast.
And his gloves are singed to the rest of his suit and he might have broken a few fingers.
Sorry, dude, they fucking hurt. I'm not trying to fondle you because I want to.
I know.
But seriously, can one of you guys get a knife and...
Thatch stopped, noticing the water fountain.
Does that thing work?
Yeah.
Thatch and Akan pushed over to the fountain and took turns drinking as much as they could before they felt like they were going to throw up.
Oh my god, this is glorious.
Akan laughed. The water was cold and crisp.
Oh.
She caught some of it in her hand and rubbed it over her face and hair.
Hey, get me too!
Akan filled her hands with water and rubbed down Thatch's head.
Thanks.
Akan turned back to the other Marines.
Alright. We'll need a knife and some flares.
Christchurch carefully cut the glove off of the hand Thatch had melted to Akan's breast, and then the melted one with the magazine. She was careful not to cut around the bits that were melted to Thatch's skin. Fortunately for Thatch, the material seared to his skin was in small bits and didn't pull much skin away when he picked them off with his knife afterward. McKenzie, Capulet, and Chuck had headed out to signal the bottom Richard. Thatch swatted away the bits of skin and glove floating around him. Akan still had the palm and inner fingers of Thatch's glove stuck to her suit. She picked at the scab-like material on her chest. The inner part of the glove flaked off, but the skin wouldn't budge. Thatch tried to scrape the material off his fingers. It was taking the top layer of skin with it, but he didn't think it was any worse than pulling dead skin off his foot. Akan unzipped the top of her spacesuit and pulled a pack of cigarettes from between her breasts.
You, know you're not supposed to bring those on mission, right, Sergeant?
Lighthouse said. Thatch looked up to see Akan lighting a smoke, then turned his head to Lighthouse with a grimace.
Shut the fuck up, you fucking boot.
Lighthouse reared his head back in shock, then looked away in embarrassment.
Give me one of those.
She passed him a cigarette and her lighter. The flame bubbled, and the smoke Thatch exhaled formed a cloud around them that expanded to the far reaches of the room. Akan took a few more drags.
What do you think they're hiding?
What do you mean?
Like, why were they trying to blow the ship instead of just getting off?
I don't think they needed to be hiding anything. They just knew it was fucked and didn't want us to get it.
The others returned to the mess deck. Chuck took a sniff.
Did someone bring smokes?
Akan flicked a cigarette to him from across the room. Chuck caught it and smirked.
Sweet. There's a signal lamp on whatever the Ruskies call Vulture's Row. Another landing party should be here in about an hour.
Killer.
Akan stuffed the pack back in her suit and zipped it up. The Marines passed their time quietly smoking Akan's cigarettes on the dim mess deck. Reinforcements came in the form of a platoon from Lima Company and a company of engineers. Captain Rodzer was with them. He came to the Marines smoking at the table. Thatch was floating upside down by the ceiling.
Yeah, it's getting pretty long there, Sergeant.
Thatch ran his fingers over his head. His hair was thick with sweat. He sighed.
Aye, sir.
And orientated himself to the captain. Captain Rodzer stared down the Marines. They did what they could best to stand for him and snuffed out their cigarettes. But he didn't care that they were smoking on the enemy ship.
So what's the damage?
Yorick's fucked up bad. Stewart's dead. Martinez got clipped. Stockton's wounded, but should be alright. Royce probably needs to see a doctor.
Thatch's head was heavy, despite being in zero gravity and needing sleep. Being that hot in the fire after running through the dark ship drained his energy, and his Marines getting wounded made him more numb than sorrowful. Rodzer looked over Chuck.
What happened to you?
He jumped on a guy who had a grenade under him, sir.
Thatch said, and then looked at Akan.
I lost Shiked and Giddle right out of the pig. Old School took one to the chest and didn't make it. Arco and Dorchester got hit, but it should be alright.
Akan took a deep breath and tried not to show any kind of emotion. She was too tired to feel anything at that point anyway.
I'm sorry about that, Marines. I know how it feels to lose Marines, but...
He looked at Akan, then at Thatch.
I heard what you two did, and I'm more than confident you saved the lives of everyone on the ship.
That knowledge failed to make either of them feel even an ounce better.
Don't worry about writing up your reports until tomorrow. The engineers will take you back to the BHR. Get some chow and sleep.
The ride back to the bottom of Shard was smooth. There were only the 7 of them in the landing craft, so they didn't feel as cramped. Thatch couldn't remember if he'd ever been in one without a helmet. It was cold and the motors hummed just above the level of being uncomfortable. He leaned his head back and tried to close his eyes. When they returned to the ship, the sailors maintained their usual buzz about the decks. They carried on with their work and laughed and joked with the other seamen. Thatch, Chuck, McKenzie, Akan, Capulet, Christchurch, and Lighthouse were disgusted with their jaunty demeanor. The berthing area was dead. The Marines all were quiet and sat about drained or melancholy if they weren't trying to sleep in their coffin racks. Thatch ripped off his suit, grabbed his uniform, and cooled down in the shower. The hot water was out, but Thatch's mind was too busy trying to be empty to be bothered by cold water. He toweled off, put on his uniform, and made his way down to the infirmary. The corpsmen and medical officers were tending to the wounded. Thatch didn't notice anyone with severe wounds. He figured they took them back first. Martinez faked a smile and waved as he passed. He was in his PT gear with a bandage wrapped around his arm. Thatch stopped him.
You alright?
Yes, Sergeant. I just got clipped.
Martinez pulled his arm up to show Thatch the bandage.
Worst part about this thing? It's gonna be the scab healing.
Alright. Glad you're alright.
Thanks, Sergeant.
Thatch moved in through the crowd until he found an ensign that didn't look particularly busy. Thatch waved him down.
Sir, do you know where I can find a HM3 Cassandra Stockton?
The ensign gave Thatch a confused look. Thatch held his hand up to about where Stockton's height would be.
Short, redhead, bob cut, India Company, green side, had a leg wound.
The ensign pulled up a tablet and opened a tracking app.
Cassandra Stockton. Is that spelled normal?
Yes, sir.
The ensign scrolled through his lists.
Looks like she got out of surgery about an hour ago. She's in a recovery tube right now.
But she's alright?
She's fine for now.
The ensign looked back down at his tablet.
She should recover completely in a couple of weeks. We'll be well enough to see the day after tomorrow.
Thatch was disappointed that he couldn't see Stockton, but was relieved that she was okay.
What about Sergeant Yorick?
The ensign pulled the app back up.
He's still in surgery.
Do you know how he's doing?
The ensign shook his head.
No. I won't be able to look it up until they're done operating.
Thanks.
Thatch turned to walk out of the medical bay. He patted his chest pocket to make sure he had cigarettes and made his way to the smoke deck. He burned through half a pack of Luckies in half an hour, trying to chain smoke his problems away. Thoughts about the day pushed themselves into his mind, and he fought away the demons by imagining them formed into a block, which he then visualized himself pushing into the ocean. He was too high-strung to deal with any of his problems at the time. He didn't want to think about the Russian ship. He didn't want to reflect on getting court-martialed, and he didn't want Samum creeping out of his subconscious. He flicked the cigarette out and walked up to line his rack. Thatch rested his head on the pillow and stared at the metal ceiling of his rack 5 inches away. He didn't get under the covers or take off his uniform. He just kicked off his boots and pushed against the side of the rack with his feet to crack his toes. He kept fighting away the monsters in his mind, trying to think of anything to comfort him. He kept the day at bay and swatted away the legal trouble he was in. But Samum wouldn't let him be, even through all the pain that he suffered because of her, and how deep it tore into his heart that they didn't work out. All he wanted to do was hold her in bed, under the thick blankets in a frigid room. He turned over, brought his pillow down to his chest, and hugged it. He closed his eyes and pretended that he was holding her instead of a cotton-filled sack for his head. He was too tired to make himself sleep and let his thoughts of her pull him into the twilight of slumber. He wondered if the two of them were magically put into a bed in each other's arms, out of the blue, what would happen, what they would say. Thatch woke in the night. He pulled the curtain open and looked down the row of racks. The only light was from the dim, red illuminators by the floor. All was quiet. Samum, who smiled at him in his dreams, who made up with him and spent her days happily with him, turned back into the pillow.
I wish you were real.
He laid back down and stared into the darkness. He wondered what was going to happen the next day and the day after. What was he going to tell his Marines about what happened on the ship? If the court-martial went bad, how long was he going to be in jail? When they had a memorial ceremony when they got back to Mars, what was he going to say to their families? If, when he got home before he went to the brig, he saw Samum on the street, would he stop to talk to her or keep walking like she wasn't there? Should he worry at all? There was nothing he could really change. Time crept at a petty pace from day to endless day, all the way to the last syllable of recorded time. All yesterdays have only shined a light for the fools on the path to despair and death. Life was only a shadow, formlessly floating through space, that struts, dances, and cries for its hour on stage. Then it's stricken from the record, and is neither seen nor heard again. It's a story told by an idiot, full of screaming and rage, meaning nothing. He traded the night's sleep for sulking, wallowing in his own pity, squeezing his pillow, and pretending it was her.
Hey, what up, peeps? Thanks for listening to another episode of Chain Smoke Your Problems Away. I hope you enjoyed it. As usual, if you don't want to sit around and wait for me to read these to you, you can just go get the whole thing on Audible. Uploaded, baby! Fucking took forever. But yeah, this is now on Audible. You can check it out there. Also, thanks to everybody who's gotten the actual physical book for it. And thank you to YouTube members who get this a little bit early. And thank you to people who've gotten the War Chest, which is the box set of these books. It's either the first 6 or the second 6, or maybe even the whole thing if you get the crate, but it's got stickers and cards and a patch and all that in it. Speaking of that, I just mailed out friggin' War Chest, I think 147 or 148. Anyway, this is the patch that comes in the War Chest. The first one, the second War Chest Mark II's got a different patch, but I've only got a few of these left, and I'm only going to give them out until War Chest 150. So if you want one of the original ones, be one of the next 3 people that gets a War Chest. But anyway, thank you people who've gotten War Chest. Thank you YouTube members. Thank you Patreon people. Those people also all get their name in the credits at the end of this, usually over the bloopers. Also, if you're a fan of the written word, my 13th novel, 13 Short Stories Down, came out on Friday, and it's pretty good if I don't say so myself. It's a little bit different than Smokepit Fairy Tales. It's not military sci-fi. There's nothing in this that would suggest that it was fantasy or sci-fi or anything. It's just regular good old literary fiction. Though if you read my books with the snark, humor, and filth, there's plenty of that in there. And again, while this isn't in the main Smokepit Fairy Tales like timeline like these books are, this is about the main character of this book is Chuck LaVoki, not to be confused with Chuck Royce, who this book's about, but Chuck LaVoki, also not the narrator of the Smokepit Fairy Tales audiobook. But Chuck LaVoki, the author of 50 Shades of Dave, you know, the books that they're reading inside of these books. So in a way, technically it's a prequel, but it doesn't have any, there's no carryover characters. Actually, technically there's one, but no one's picked up on that character's existence yet. That's a little Easter egg for later. And by later, I mean, I'm going to point out exactly what it is in like 5 or 10 years. But in the meantime, if anybody figures it out, let me know. That being said, also big thank you to the Patreon people who get these chapters as I get done with them. I think we're on chapter 6 or 7 of book 5 over there already. And I'm burning through that one pretty quick because I think Chain Smoke Your Problems Away is going to be airing on YouTube until, I believe, June. It's a long book. And Smokepit Fairy Tales 5 is nowhere near as long, so, you know. I'm going to be burning through that! That being said, my goal is to have, well, I want to have Smokepit Fairy Tales 5's audiobook up on Audible before we're done with Smokepit Fairy Tales 4. But I also don't think it's unreasonable to also have it as a goal to have Smokepit Fairy Tales 6 on Audible before all of Smokepit Fairy Tales 4 is on YouTube. Now, I know I said this in a video a long time ago, and I am going to stick to it, but if this YouTube channel has 10,000 followers by time that Smokepit Fairy Tales 4 is done airing over here, when we get around to 6, I will do a chapter a day instead of a chapter a week just for that book. But that's the fan that's coming on, so I'm going to go. Again, thank you very much to everybody, and here are your bloopers. I'll catch you around.
Test. Are we tested? Cool.
Chuck, look. You know how you can't say your own name?
Things are just a little bit hectic, but they're all good.
It's your fault.
There's like a shit ton of ways you can say fuck it. I'm just going to give you like 100 of them, like right now, okay? I'm going to say fuck it, like a lot. Just pick one, because a lot of different ways could work here. Cool? Cool.
Chuck looked at her in disgust.
Gotta wait for the wind to die down, 'cause it's storming out. It's finally winter.
Fuck it.
Chuck looked at his own reflection in disgust at his inability to say such a simple, inane sentence.
All right, chapter 27. This one's a little bit long.
Fuck it.
So he's not looking directly at her, or the disgust is not directed at her?
You look like you're trying to suck it.
Fuck it.
Yeah, but they'd pick up that communications. What? Oh, okay. I see what it wants.
Fuck it.
Yeah, how do you want me to emphasize this? Gotcha.
Fuck it.
Chapter 27. May the fires of hell purge me clean. Aye, laddie.
Yeah, but they'd pick up that communications were going out and know that there's still people on board. Fuck.
Marines activate magnets in their boots.
Holy shit! We thought we... fuck!
Okay, this is Martinez, chapter 27. May the fires of hell purge me clean. Sounds like the curry I had the other night, right?
We should go to the galley and try and scrounge up chow and water. I should fucking nail the lines better.
Holy shit!
We should go to the galley and try and... I can't say the word scrounge.
Sweet. There was a signal lamp on whatever the Ruskies call the...
She's fine for now. She should recover. Well, forget that one.
You're a scroungy little rounge mounge. That doesn't even mean anything. What in the fuck?
Shit. I lost my fucking spot.
We should go to the galley and try and scrounge up some chow and water. We should go to the galley and try to scrounge up chow and water. Unique, New York.
Sweet. There was a signal lamp on whatever the Ruskies call Vulture's Row. Another landing party should be...
He figured while he had his helmet on, he should try hailing the murderer.
Sweet. There was a signal lamp on... fuck me.
Fuck yes, got it.
Oh, so his hand is still in his fucking glove. Okay, I'm getting it now. Alright, I've just been kind of confused about the scene setting. I thought I got out of his gloves. Alright, so one of them still got a magazine melted to, and the other one's just touching. He just stuck to her fucking boob.
Move! Capulet scoots McKenzie out of the way. Capulet put his mouth close to the fountain and pushed the button back. The water flew straight into his mouth.
Akan flicked a cigarette to him from across the room. Cowboy Bebop.
Slightly better, but I'm still not sure about how I feel about it. Maybe take 3.
I could see it. One of the sexiest fucking smoking animations ever done. Passing a cigarette from hand to hand in 0G.
Not quite like this. Thatch and Okan were separated from their company in a failed landing when they were boots, and had to evade until they could steal an escape pod, but I still fucked this up, and the ship was full of pissed off Russians. I'm going to do this again.
He burned through half a pack of Luckies in half an hour, trying to chain smoke his problems away. Roll credits.
What could they do? We've got 3 ships out there, and they have to know that they lost this one. Man, I gotta learn how to fucking read again.
Fuck it.